When it comes to your child's health,
You want care that's close, convenient,
and centered around the needs of your family.
At MMC Pediatrics, we're more than just doctors.
We're partners in your parenting journey.
here for every growth spurt,
for every boo-boo,
every fever, and every flu.
Our team approach means that your child always sees someone that knows them.
We are MMC Pediatrics.
We are right beside you.
Every step of the way.
Neighbor Network, FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna, audio and video streaming at WGNSradio.com. This is the Roundtable, Tennessee Association of Broadcasters Award winner for Best Local Talk Show. A look at the news, views, politics, sports, and people shaping Rutherford County.
Good morning, Bill Krause on the WGNS Radio Roundtable Thursday morning edition. Hope you all having a wonderful day. Weather warm, sometimes even hot, but still it's always nice to take a deep breath. We're very pleased, very excited, and very enthusiastic to present a gentleman that visits us very often, kind of brings us up to date from what's happening in the state capitol. One of our state legislators from Rutherford County, a gentleman who combines the world of medicine to the world of the political process. Good morning, State Representative Bryan Terry.
Thank you for having me. Good morning to you as well.
It's great. For any new listeners and so forth, Bryan, give us a little bio about yourself. Born where, schooled where, professionally where, family where?
Okay, well, that's an interesting story. Thank you for asking. Again, appreciate you guys for having me, and,
Sure.
and welcome to all the listeners out there. So I've got a kind of, I guess, unique background. I grew up in Oklahoma City. Actually grew up, went to Moore High School. I tell people that, Murfreesboro is to Nashville what Norman, where the University of Oklahoma is, what Norman is to Oklahoma City.
But not as many tornadoes, I hope. Isn't that the tornado path?
Yeah,
Norman?
it is. And that's a history that I've got there as well. But yeah, but I grew up I went to Moore High School. Moore is essentially the Smyrna of Oklahoma, but grew up, third generation auto salvage. My grandparents and my parents had a junkyard. And so, when I was, I guess.
Don't we call it recycling yards now?
If you're in the business, auto salvage,
Right.
My parents would just, going to the shop, that's kind of how they would do it. We also, I guess when I was 13, I was down there, started pulling parts off of cars. When I was 16, I was driving our delivery truck. We also grew up with, I guess in the mid-'70s, my parents, I don't know what they were thinking, but they went out of their way and they bought a horse.
A horse?
And so we ended up with a horse farm. And
Had it been considered for a while, or was it just a spur of the moment?
No, I think that was just something that they kind of
Wanted
to do and got interested in. And so from as a child, my parents, we had a horse farm and raised horses, and my parents, we ran horses. They ran quarter horses, had a few thoroughbreds. And then from that, I went to the University of Oklahoma, got my undergraduate degree there, to that point, I had severe asthma, severe allergies. My parents, I'm allergic to horses, allergic to cats. We had indoor cats. You had barn cats.
Wow.
And I was in and out of the ER all the time.
So you never were going to become a veterinarian.
I actually thought, I love animals, and we've got a lot of rescue,
Sure.
had rescue animals over the years, and so that was in my mind. But I actually wanted to go to medicine to kind of help me and help others like me, and so I ended up got into OU College of Medicine, and then I wanted to be a pulmonologist, but being having a severe asthmatic, I could not really be around or be in doctor's offices where there are a lot of smokers. And so, as a pulmonologist, everybody comes in, they smell like smoke, and I physically could not do that. And our the family that actually sold my parents their first horse, they were physicians. They were family physicians. They were our doctors. And one of the younger physician had quit family practice and had gone into anesthesia. And so when I was in medical school, he talked me into trying the anesthesia rotation, and I realized that was kind of the pathway I wanted to go. And so I ended up doing my anesthesia rotation or residency at UT Knoxville, and so that's how I got to Tennessee. But going back to, you talk about tornadoes. So when I was an intern, my intern year, that was when the Oklahoma City bombing occurred, and I was
95?
95, April 19th, 1995. I was actually assisting on a laparoscopic gallbladder with the trauma surgeon in Oklahoma City when that happened.
Wow.
And two of my high school classmates perished in the bombing. One of them was pregnant at the time. And so we actually set up a triage and went down. And I was at one of the hospitals a little bit further out, but I got to assist in helping take care of some of the victims, particularly the kids that were in the daycare across the street. So that's kind of a unusual, obviously, background that I've had. But then I guess it was May.
Well, you were part of history,
well,
certainly.
And I've just trying to talk about it. I'm starting to get a little choked up.
Oh, sure, sure.
But then I guess it was May 20th, 2013. A F5 tornado hit our farm.
Wow.
And we lost, we still had horses at the time, lost 37 horses, potbelly pig.
Was anybody home at the time?
Well, see, my parents never actually built on the farm. My parents lived about 5 miles north of the farm. The farm was right on the border between South Oklahoma City and Moore. And for whatever reason, my parents never built out there, but my mom was out there. She at that time had a flip phone, whatever. She technology was not her thing. Yeah.
Right.
And it started sprinkling on her. She was out there feeding horses, and it started to sprinkle on her. And normally she would have pulled into one of the barns and kind of waited it out. But, for as a grace of God moment, she decided she was going to just drive on home. And on the way home, that's when the tornado siren hit.
Wow.
And the tornado came through and destroyed everything. So that's kind of...
so you have gone through the realities of Oklahoma and the realities of tragedy.
Yeah, it's... so I've got a fairly unique background. Also, I am... Native American, the only tribal member here in Tennessee. We're Choctaw, and so our tribe actually was, from the Indian Removal Act of 1830, for Andrew Jackson. Wow. The first tribe that got relocated were the Choctaws, and so that's kind of how my ancestors got to Oklahoma.
I always wondered whether the Trail of Tears, when they were leaving Carolina and heading to Oklahoma, didn't they walk right past Andrew Jackson's home in Hermitage?
There may be trails that have gone that way as well. A few years ago, the Hermitage, they actually reached out to me, and I want to say that I may have been the first Native American. They had some leadership conference, and they wanted me to come speak and discuss, my background, but discuss that I guess they wanted to bridge a gap and see what they can do to you can't erase what occurred.
No,
but
you try to minimize the hurt.
Yeah, and they wanted to. You can't really make up for it, but they wanted to move forward, and so they say if you want to make a difference, oftentimes go where you're not expected.
Exactly.
And so I looked at that as an opportunity to go there, and they were very gracious. And that's one of the things that it kind of bothers me in society, that we often ruminate on things that happened 400 years ago, 200 years ago.
Exactly.
And you can look at things at the past, present, and future, and you know the past, obviously, you know, you can ruminate on. You can look at it for justice. You can look at it for blame. You can look at it, hopefully, for education, so that we learn from the past and don't repeat the things, you know, to make us a more perfect union. And then, you know, the present is, you know, what do you value at the present time? And, you know, for me, you know, I can look at the back, and I can look at, you know, the Trail of Tears, the Indian Removal Act, and if I wanted to sit here and ruminate on all that, that's not going to do me any good.
Absolutely.
But when I look at the present and what is important to me, you know, I look at, you know, my family, I look at my kids, and so my dad's side of the family actually were the Terrys of Scott County. They were like the sheriff or whatever, and so my ancestors from my dad's side came from Tennessee to Oklahoma. That my ancestors from my mom's side came from Mississippi, in that area, and they met in Oklahoma. And so the way I look at it is, as you know, you can look back on all the atrocities that occurred from the Indian Removal Act and all that, but if I want to look at one positive that came out of that, it was that the two lines met in Oklahoma, and had that not happened, I wouldn't have my kids. And so the future is based on, you know, you're looking at what choices and what options that you have, and so
opportunities.
And so for me, it was, you know, speaking at the Hermitage, I wanted to bring that out, and that, you know, for them, their choice and their options they have moving forward is to educate people how not to have an atrocity like that, but what can they do moving forward, and then what choices do I have moving forward to help my kids and their generation. And that's kind of what drove me towards wanting to be at the state.
And to be proud, and the pride of the culture and the heritage that you share and your kids will carry on.
Yeah, that's one thing, you know, they talk about Oklahoma being Indian territory, and the thing that, you know, I remember from, you know, the history books and the classes, you know, they called us the 5 civilized tribes. And, you know, for me, I have to look at it as, you know, my ancestors were, you know, I guess survivors. And they were thinkers, and they were able to survive that area and get to Oklahoma and eventually thrive. And
so from Knoxville, did you come directly to Middle Tennessee?
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, being in Knoxville, I absolutely love Knoxville, and the way I actually got there, you know, in residency or in medical school, you do something called the match, and so I interviewed like 8 or 9 different residency slots, and then you rank them. And in theory, I guess it's a contract. So if you put them on your list, and they put you on their ranking
consideration,
if you put a program on there, that's a contractual. You're contractually bound to go there and work at least 1 year. And so I actually ranked UT Knoxville number 1 on my list. And
are you still a UT fan?
Yeah. I was at Peyton Manning's last game.
Okay.
And I guess I was in UT's top 6. We had 8 residents. They took 6 from the match, and then they took 2 outside the match. And so apparently I was in their top 6, and so we matched. And while I was in residency, you know, we were looking. My wife and I we were looking for a small town, or, you know, a town outside of it. We didn't want to be in a big city. Be in a town outside of a big city, maybe a college town.
Desire to go back to Oklahoma?
Well, that I had an opportunity to go back there. My wife didn't really want to go back there, but I ended up actually I had signed a contract and had talked to a group outside of Dallas, Texas, in Denton, you know, where University of North Texas is. And at the time, though, Dr. Mark Hardison, who's an oral surgeon here in town, they have to do 6 months of anesthesia training.
Wow.
And I was actually teaching him how to do anesthesia. And he said, you know, Murfreesboro's opening up a surgery center. I think they're going to need another anesthesiologist. We'd love to have you. And so I called. I was the president of the Tennessee Society of Anesthesiologists, the resident component at the time, and this is pretty much pre-internet.
Sure.
I'm dating myself here. And I had actually, for all the residents in Tennessee, had put out feelers all across the nation, and was doing it the old analog, hard way, all the from mail, I guess. But I made the phone call, and it was interesting. It was either Eleanor or Virginia. I can't remember who in our office had answered the phone at the time. They're retired now, but they said, "No, I don't think they're looking for anybody." Well, actually, they were. That night, the group was actually having a meeting. That next morning, they called me and said, "Have you taken a job yet? We'd love to have you
meet with you."
And so I came here and interviewed, and wife and I loved it. And ironically, it was like, a week or so later, one of my partners had, he sat down, and I probably shouldn't tell this story, but he sat down in the holding area, and he's got the resumes of people they'd interviewed. And one of the nurses that worked in the holding area, I guess when Andrew, is my partner, was walking me around, he had taken me to the holding area, and then he had to go do something. I don't know if he had to go to the OR or what he had to do, but left me there, and I start talking to the holding area nurses, and I'm just trying to get a feel of
what they are,
of what their thoughts of the group, this, that, and the other. But anyway, apparently, I don't recall all what I asked or how the interaction was, but apparently I made an impression. And so when he sat down, I guess they knew that I was Native American. But anyway, when I sat down, one of the holding area nurses, she's like family to us now, but she's like, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I'm looking at the resumes." And she said, "Which one's the Indian?" Bryan, that's the one we want.
Oh, I don't know how politically.
Yeah, that's not politically correct.
At that point. Wow. I have to ask you this question totally as a person who has received work from your profession. How do you choose? Is there a difference in qualitative performance of performing your function? I mean, if you take 3 people, does one do it better, putting the person out for surgery?
Well, yeah, you can look at that, and oftentimes, so like us, you can call. I know, so we've hired other folks that have come from UT residency, and and some that are Vanderbilt, other places as well that are in our group.
Sure.
And so you call people that that are attendings at those places and ask. Obviously you have the recommendations, but you ask them what type of resident are they? Are they, thoughtful? Do they honestly
work well with others?
Honestly, that's the big thing there, is working well with others, and how they fit in, and the culture that you have within your group, and can you get along, and is there going to be tension? So I'll tell you that when I was interviewing and looking for a job, there was one place, I'm not going to say where it was, but they had 2 of their doctors who had, I guess they'd sued each other and had gotten into it, and it's like,
it's a nice team.
Yeah, it's like, this is not at all where you want to be. You want to be in an environment where, you take care of the patients. And I mean, for us, I will tell you, like at our hospital, even though I may be assigned and have 4 rooms, 4 patients, all 20 rooms that we're dealing with, they're all our patients. Right. And so in the event that there's an emergency, these 4 rooms over here may be one of my partner's rooms, but he may be taking care of some other issue, and an emergency comes up, and they say, "Hey, we need an anesthesiologist stat here." You may have 3 anesthesiologists show up, and so we take care of all the patients. But it's a teamwork thing.
The whole area, and are you judged on how confident or confidence you build in the patient as you converse with them prior to they're going into the surgical room?
Yeah, and that's interesting that I tell people, they ask me about, running for office and knocking on doors, and it's kind of interesting, and that's kind of one of the reasons how I actually ended up in Tennessee. Believe it or not, most people, they think that you're in your politics, you're very extroverted, you're outgoing, and you're this. No, I am very
Laid back.
I'm very introverted, and at a party I'd be a wallflower. When you're going to some event or a party, introverts are thinking, what's my exit strategy before I walk in the door?
Exactly.
And for me, one of the things that they did at UT Knoxville, they would have the residents. They did what's called morning report, and they would bring us in, all the residents that morning, and the attending that was on the night before would put people on the spot, and they, when we saw the case that we did that had these symptoms, had this, they were going to have this surgery, and then they would ask different residents, well, what would you do in this situation? Okay, well, this happened, and then they'd ask the next resident. So they put people on the spot, and I knew that for me, I needed to come out of my comfort zone. I was going to have to grow as a person and as a physician, and I wanted that challenge.
Sure.
And so, for me, you said, how do you, put people's, make them comfortable.
The fear.
And so, like for running for office, I tell people, as an anesthesiologist, I go talk to them, and within 5 minutes, effectively, you've convinced them to put their life in your hands.
You haven't put them to sleep.
Haven't put them to sleep yet, yeah.
Good.
Well, I tell people I can put you to sleep with drugs or talking politics. It's one of those two things.
Yes.
But they're putting their lives in my hands within 5 minutes.
Sure.
And, when I knock on a door and talk to somebody, they're effectively putting their livelihood in my hands within 5 minutes. And it's kind of the same thing, but you have to, empathy is a big thing in medicine. You have to, I will tell you, like nerve blocks. I do nerve blocks, and in anesthesia, you do that all the time. And I tell people and when I'm, try to get them at ease, I'll tell them, not only do I do these blocks, I've had these blocks because I've had multiple surgeries,
Sure.
And so it's one of those things where you try to, get a bond, get them at ease. But everybody's a little bit different. Sometimes I will say to patients, I'll give them the choice. Would you like anything for your nerves, or are you okay? And so when you give somebody a locus of control, they have that control for that point. That gives them ease. Oftentimes they'll say, "No, I'm okay." But if they hesitate,
there's
I know
Yep.
that, and so those are some little things over the years I've kind of learned and try to help people get through surgery.
How did you make the decision or explore the decision to enter the world of politics?
Wow. Okay. That's in politics. That's often called the get off the couch moment.
Okay.
And so for me, it was actually I'd always been politically attentive, never really politically active. And so it really goes back to the 2012 presidential election. I was not, I'm not going to go into detail, but I was obviously not a fan of either of the two presidential candidates. But I was actually on call at the hospital that night of the election night, and I actually got home. We actually finished up in the OR early enough for me to get home, and the election results started coming down. And my son was in high school at the time, and I actually went up to his room and apologized to him. I said, "My generation has failed your generation. We haven't done enough. I'm going to see what I can do to make a difference." And I had no intent on running for office or anything like that, and I just wanted to see how I could get involved. And that following, I guess it was either January
of
2013, the American Society of Anesthesiologists was having their national, it was a business political meeting. They usually have that every year. Sometimes it's in Vegas, sometimes it's in Atlanta or different places. Well, that year happened to be in Vegas. And so at the time I was looking at either doing like an MBA or getting into doing politics or something along those lines. But anyway, the ASA offered like a business certification. So I went there to kind of look at that. But during that meeting, they had these breakout sessions, and I wanted to learn how I could get involved. And they had the state and federal liaison from the ASA there at one of the breakout meetings. So they had these round tables, and I think I was one of maybe 3 people that were compelled enough to sit down and learn how we could get involved. And at the end of that meeting, I'm like, what can I do to get involved? And they said, you need to run for office. And I said, I don't need to run for office. And then they said, no, you really do need to run for office. And they, at the time, Joe Carr and Jim Tracy were going to run against Scott Desjardins, and they said, what you do and the way you think, you need to run, and one of those 2 seats is going to be open. And it may be 10 years before you have an opportunity. So if you think can make a difference. So that night, my wife and I were actually going to see Penn and Teller, the magicians. And so I think it was at the Wynn. I can't remember the hotel it was at, but we were at some restaurant there at the hotel where they were having their show, and sitting down with my wife, and I said, you're not going to believe what these guys told me. They said I ought to run for office. And my wife looked at me across the table, and she said,
only as a wife can do.
And she said, well, have you ever thought of it?
Oh, now that's a reaction.
And so I was like, oh, okay. And so I looked into it, and I called multiple physicians, there's a guy that was a state senator in Oklahoma at the time, that he was actually gone to pharmacy school with my wife, and I played basketball with him in college and stuff, and so I knew him, and so I called several physicians that were serving, and kind of mapped it out, and obviously talked to my group, and decided, well, here goes. And in my mind, it's one of those things, you're very naive in what you're doing, and in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, the worst that can happen is, okay, I'll be out some money, but I'm going to knock on a lot of doors, and I'm going to make a lot of friends. And I had that kind of attitude of doing it, and
make it a family affair.
Yeah, and I met so many people. And like the other night, I was at an event, and
you weren't looking for the escape door.
No, but I knew I had to leave, because I had another event to go to after that too.
Okay.
But I had somebody come up to me, and they said, in all of my years in living where I live, and they said, and my driveway is, you have to go quite a distance to get to my home. There's only been 2 people that have been at my door.
Wow.
And there was a group of Jehovah's Witnesses
and you. Oh, now that's a testimony.
Yeah.
That's a testimony. Let's switch. I was very impressed. Talk about your 2 writing contributions that you recently submitted.
Oh, okay. So, I've got a little blog. I going back to, like, my undergraduate was in psychology, and and whether it's good or bad, I probably psychoanalyze too many things, but I have a blog that it's called Terry's Take, and I'll write about different things, and a lot of it's psychology. And it was several weeks ago, and the TCAP scores came back, and and you see the news, and it says you have this, only 40 some odd percent are proficient. Well, that means 60% are not proficient, and therefore we're failing our kids. And so I'm not on the education committee, and that's I get involved, and I've run several bills relative to some of that as well, but I'm not on that committee. And it's not when you're at the Capitol, you kind of as chairman of health, I've got to deal with 120 some odd bills in health, and my own bills. But I thought, nobody's ever actually discussed why, what proficient means, what rigor means. You always hear, well, the test is more rigorous. And I'd actually written an article, I guess last year, on Bloom's taxonomy.
Yep.
And that's something that they're taught in education. and it's basically 6 levels of learning, and it starts with remembering, then it goes to understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and then creating. And it had dawned on me when I was just thinking about how I can explain this to constituents, that nobody has ever actually explained what the test meant, how we got to this point, and how we can improve on that. And so I wrote an article, years ago. Tennessee, the TCAPs and the testing that we had early 2000s was really testing about the lowest level of Bloom's taxonomy and remembering. Can you remember this fact? Can you remember this number? Can you remember this equation or whatever on math or whatever? And what would happen is they called it the integrity gap. We would have really good scores here in Tennessee, but then when we would take the national test, the NAEP, we would bomb those tests.
Wow.
And it was because the national tests are testing more of the apply, analyze type questions. And so there was a concerted effort. And so when they talk about rigor, nobody understood what that meant. And it's you're actually trying to test the higher levels of learning.
Correct.
And most people don't understand that. And I don't think most of the politicians or the elected
faculty
officials, they don't know that. And I, to that point, I will tell you, I often joke that had I studied in high school like I did in college, I'd have been a 4.0 in high school.
Exactly.
Had I studied in college like I did in medical school, I'd have been a 4.0 in college. And had I studied for medical school like I did for the boards, I would have been 4.0. Nobody ever taught me this way of learning.
The strategies.
And so for me, I think, and I'm actually, I've reached out. Actually, the Commissioner of Health sent me an email thanking me for that explanation, and I'm meeting with them. I'm actually going to the Capitol today. They couldn't meet today, but there's some ideas and ways. I think that if people know how to learn and have better understanding of what you're trying to get at, we will improve.
Let me hold you just for a moment so we can pay our bills. We're having a wonderful conversation on a topic right now that is of extraordinary interest to me as well as a faculty member and as one who's been doing the ACT preparation courses for a number of years. So we'll be right back in just a moment.
When it comes to your child's health,
You want care that's close, convenient.
and centered around the needs of your family.
At MMC Pediatrics, we're more than just doctors.
We're partners in your parenting journey.
Here for every growth spurt,
for every boo-boo,
every fever, and every flu.
Our team approach means that your child always sees someone that knows them.
We are MMC Pediatrics.
We are right beside you.
Every step of the way.
It's auction time. It's auction time this Saturday, July 18th. Preview 8 a.m. with auctioneer Steve Sandlin, starting the live auction at 10 at 1554 Bear Branch Cove, Murfreesboro. In a highly sought-after neighborhood, this all-brick masterpiece features 4 bedrooms, 3 full and 2 half baths, 3 separate garage spaces, stamped and stained concrete, hardwood and tile floors, 14 and 20-foot ceilings, a pool with waterfall slide, and so much extra. See more at ReliantAuctioneers.com. Firm 5860, license 5942.
City of Murfreesboro, this is Jacob Morphus running for your city council. If you want someone who values unconditional integrity, has a servant's heart, but is gritty and gets things done, then I am your candidate. I serve people for a living. I'm seeking this role not as a politician, but as a passionate resident looking to serve the community I love. Early voting is July 17th through August 1st and Election Day August 6th. I will be grateful for your vote. God bless.
Paid for by Jacob Morphus for Murfreesboro City Council. Jacob Morphus, Treasurer.
Murfreesboro, the clock is ticking. Academy Child Development is making their biggest offer of the year. New families who enroll in the next 30 days can secure our summer promotional rates. Picture your kids laughing, learning, and making memories all summer, while you save like never before. But when these 30 days are up, this deal disappears forever. Call the Academy today at 629-284-3108. That's 629-284-3108.
This is Good Neighbor Events with Bart Walker. Brought to you by the law offices of John Day and AmeriCare Pest Control.
This is a paid legal ad.
At the law offices of John Day, we take only real cases that make a real difference.
The law offices of John Day took the burden really off of my shoulders.
So if you think you're going to get rich quick with a frivolous case, I'm not the lawyer for you.
I want you to know that I appreciate everything you have done so much. I know you went over and beyond.
If we're not able to help or aren't the right lawyer for you, we'll do the best to point you in the right direction. If you've been injured, call the law offices of John Day for a free consultation.
Now, Good Neighbor Events. Here's Bart Walker.
Greenhouse Ministries is offering their 5th annual Live in the Borough. It's coming up September the 18th. I know that's a little way away, but if you want to be in the talent show, you need to register now. Go to liveintheborough.org and sign up to be in the talent show. You can also go to liveintheborough.org and get your tickets, just $25 each. Those tickets are going to go quickly. Jordan McCullough will be headlining the event. Live in the Borough. That's Friday, September the 18th, 6:30 in the evening at Hop Springs. The Parkinson Support Group meets on the first and third Friday of each month, 10 o'clock in the morning, at the St. Clair Senior Center. That's the Parkinson Support Group. We remember you. An Alzheimer's and Dementia Caregiver Support Group meeting every second Tuesday afternoon at 4 at the Villages of Murfreesboro. For more information about this Alzheimer's and Dementia Caregiver Support Group meeting, call the Villages of Murfreesboro. Those are WGNS Good Neighbor Events.
Rutherford weather.
Mainly cloudy today with a chance of thunderstorms. High of 90. Partly cloudy with fog tonight, chance of thunderstorms, 73. I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki on News Radio WGNS. Right now, it's 78 degrees.
WGNS is powered by Middle Tennessee Electric. Sharing Change has donated now over $12 million to local nonprofits. Find out how your spare change can make a big impact at sharingchange.org.
This is the Roundtable from News Radio WGNS on FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna. Listen and watch at WGNSradio.com.
Hi, Bill Krause again on a second segment of the WGNS Radio Roundtable, and we're having a delightful visit and a very informative visit by one of our state legislators that have been serving Rutherford County in the state capitol, State Rep Bryan Terry. Bryan, how long have you been on the legislature? In the legislature?
Yeah, I have served for 12 years.
Wow, so this is going into your 13th year, hopefully election turning out well.
Lord willing, we'll serve another term and be my 13th year.
Before we go back to your writings again, and I also want to talk about your other writing, how would you have rated the just completed legislative year of 2025-2026?
Wow. It's quite fascinating because I'm not going to say which representative it was, but they were giving a talk and they were making the comment of this was one of the easiest, most smooth sessions that they've ever gone through. And I looked at him, I said, this was the roughest one I think that one of the roughest ones that I've ever gone through. But it was because, for my perspective, a lot of the big issues were related to healthcare.
Sure.
And, we had rural health issues. That's still an issue going out there. We had some stuff dealing with the PBMs and that. And there was just a lot of, we had certificate of need issues, hospital-related issues. There were some big issues from the healthcare perspective, and then I was running a bill dealing with ibogaine, which the Hope Treatment Act, and that was something that I'd fought hard on to help veterans and those with PTSD, and in the end, they weren't going to fund the bill, and I was, trying to figure out how I can get that still over the finish line, and lo and behold, the efforts that we were making caught the attention of RFK Jr. and President Trump, and he held a press conference, and they did some funding at the federal level, and well, there you have it. If they're going to do it, then we have to pass it here, right? And
why can't we?
So I kind of helped leverage some of that for our veterans and some of our patients. We were able to get that across the finish line. But I don't know how from me, I would say the stress level during there, it was one of the more stressful. At the end of the day, finishing, it was one of the more satisfying things. One of the big issues that I had that I want, we're facing a huge shortage of physicians and healthcare providers in general, nationwide. Okay. They revised the numbers. It was, I think there were anywhere from 90 to 130,000 by 2034. They're now saying maybe 141,000 physicians short by 2038. Wow. We're potentially up to 6,000 maybe here in Tennessee that we may be short. And one of the big initiatives, I've been trying to help us recruit and retain physicians, but worked to get a new interdisciplinary building for the College of Medicine in Memphis, and that's going to help us increase the number of medical students that we have. And it's not just Memphis, because I want to make sure people understand that. Those medical students, it's 4 years of medical school. The first 2 years, it's pretty much classwork.
Sure.
And your third and fourth year, you're going out in the community training. And so they're training, the systems statewide. And so that's kind of will be the hub, but those students will be going statewide. And those residents, once they finish medical school, we have residency statewide, including here at our hospital. And so to me, that was monumental for us. So I feel some personal satisfaction with the way things were there, but it was a stressful ride along the way.
Does the residency program, past, present, or future, talk about mandated in the rural areas that somebody is going to apply for residency and they may go with Vanderbilt or may go with TriStar or one of the hospitals, but they're assigned to a rural clinic?
Well, yeah, some of them, and that's some of the things that we're working on, is how to get folks out into rural areas. And some rural areas will help support a medical student, help them pay for their college. In exchange, you can serve 5 years or whatever. And that's one of the things, is if you can serve in a community, you start building a practice there, and then you don't want to leave.
Right.
And so back in Oklahoma, we did one of our rotations. We had a rural preceptorship as a senior resident and senior medical student, and so we'd spend a month. I spent a month in Pauls Valley, Oklahoma, and I actually stayed in a little. This is pre-internet, so there's absolutely nothing to do there.
Right.
and
sit and watch the trees.
And
grow.
I'd actually was in a soft cast. I'd broken my foot.
Ooh.
And but they had a little room above the ER, and I stayed in that little room, and I'd worked with the surgeon in town, and so I would help him surgery. I talked with the anesthesia provider there, and then I'd work in the ER, and then when they'd let me off, the only thing they had to do there, they had a little golf course, and so I walked with a little soft cast on a little golf course. I don't normally play golf at all, but that was the only thing to do at the time, and so I did it.
Did you become good?
No.
Okay.
So I'll tell you a story.
Please.
When I first got here, I hadn't been here very long, and they were having a scramble out at Indian Hills. And they Payne Hardison, so Mark Hardison's dad, had a scramble, and he had Fred Lovelace, who was one of the original founders of our anesthesia group, and then they had another dentist in town, and they were looking for a fourth. And some of my partners and some of the anesthesia CRNAs there play golf a lot. I don't. but I was the only one available, and I'm just hoping that they
somebody's
could,
going to
that we can use one of my shots. And so we
Sure.
get there, and we play, and afterwards you get back into the clubhouse, and they start giving out awards, and I'm like winning awards for like longest drive, winning awards for closest to the pin, and straightest drive. And so afterwards, I've got all these doctors or whoever, and they're like, man, we didn't know you could play golf. You need to come to the country club, but you need to join this, you need to do that. And I was like, listen, let me explain this to you. Longest drive, I paid money to charity to hit off the women's tee.
Okay.
My drive hit the cart path and just kept on going.
Wow.
So that's how I won that. Straightest drive, I sliced my drive into somebody's yard. It hit a tree, ricocheted off, and came back and landed on the line.
Looks
for
like a
straightest
commercial
drive.
that's out right now.
And then closest to the pin, well, it was a par 3, and I can hit an 8-iron, and that was
Okay.
so-
Wow. Well, that's fantastic.
But anyway, that's how I golf.
Dreams and hopes for the 26-27 legislative session.
I think we'll see who the next governor is going to be, how that's going to work. I do think from a physician recruit and retaining, there's some things that we can continue to do. I think the Memphis Safe Task Force that's out there, if we're going to have a new shiny building there,
be safe.
but it's got to be safe. And I'll tell you, I used to play basketball all the time, and I did a month at Le Bonheur there, did my pediatric rotation there, and I still remember they put us up at the apartment complex, catty corner to Le Bonheur, and I was a gym rat, and I'd go play ball, and I was up at the top. There's a gym at the top of that apartment complex, and I had the window open. I was working out, and I was like, I'm gonna go play basketball, and I kind of look out there, and there's a game going on. Then all of a sudden, I hear gunshots.
Oh.
And I was like, no. My wife was, pregnant at the time, and I was like, I'm not gonna risk our family, and so I did not. But that's one of the big things from the Memphis Task Force is they've cut down the crime significantly down there. They're renovating that area, and when you talk to the staff there, there's a lot of improvements that are going on, and so I think it's gonna really help them over there. So that's one of the things that I'm looking forward to. That from a health perspective, we'll do some things on there. We still, the top issue in my district is always the landfill.
Correct.
Seeing if there's potentially some things that we can do to help Rutherford County and help Murfreesboro. It's still, it's a difficult nut to crack because of the contracts that were signed by the county and the city back in 1995. But if we can get the other counties to do their part, and that therein lies the problem, is they're not doing their part. They look at
this is just a dumping ground.
They're going to send it to us, but if we can make them do their part, then it can hopefully decrease the amount of trash that's coming to us.
Sure. Talk about the second article. The first, of course, was student testing, but the second one was probably more your interest in psychology.
Yeah, and I'd written the first one, and I was trying to follow that up with another article, and I've been a fan of Scott Adams, who does Dilbert. He passed away earlier this year. That kind of was crushing to me, but he used to do a morning coffee that he would kind of do a little podcast, and I saw one of his discussions again, and he made the statement that we are not thinking creatures, we are rationalizing creatures. And ironically, that quote made me think.
Sure.
And that goes back to some of the psychology that's out there. There's books from Thinking Fast and Slow. And ironically, you think you want to be a fast thinker or a quick thinker, be quick on your feet, but that book pretty much discussed how thinking fast is really your intuitive thinking, and thinking slow is the logical process. And the reality of the situation is that we often jump to conclusions really quick and then rationalize it later. You know, that's what Scott Adams meant was, you know, we are rationalizing. We will double down. And when facts often are presented to people that are contrary to what they have believed or the decision that they have made, instead of rethinking and, you know, maybe I'm wrong, people double down because they have cognitive dissonance and they don't want to, it's hurtful for them. It's psychologically painful to admit that you were wrong. And so between that and then there's another book out there on, it's dealing with moral foundations and how oftentimes, you know, we have our, you know, our own moral foundations depending on what we favor along that. That's part of the intuition. But going back to the end of it, you know, how can we think how to think and how can we think things through? And that's something called metacognition.
Let me tell you an experience with that right after we have this break from one of our, or more than one of our sponsors.
When it comes to your child's health,
you want care that's close, convenient,
and centered around the needs of your family.
At MMC Pediatrics, we're more than just doctors.
We're partners in your parenting journey.
Here for every growth spurt,
for every boo-boo,
every fever, and every flu.
Our team approach means that your child always sees someone that knows them.
We are MMC Pediatrics.
We are right beside you
every step of the way.
I'll be right there.
It takes all of us to power a community, both in plain sight and behind the scenes. Middle Tennessee Electric, bringing good energy.
First Shot transforms Rutherford County youth. Coach Andy Herzer leads dynamic basketball camps and clinics, building skills and character since 2003. Kids dive into exciting STEM projects, sparking creativity through hands-on coding, art, and dance. They elevate their mind, spirit, and body in summer and winter programs. Visit firstshottn.org today to learn more. First Shot, where kids gain, elevate, and develop.
August 1st, and Election Day is August 6th.
Paid for by Austin Maxwell for Murfreesboro City Council. Austin Maxwell, Treasurer.
This is the Roundtable from News Radio WGNS on FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna. Listen and watch at WGNSradio.com.
Welcome back. Third and final segment, small segment of the WGNS Radio Roundtable, Thursday morning edition. Just before we adjourn the story, I was going to tell you that when smoking was legal in places, the profession that I was in for many years, city management and faculty, used to always smoke pipes. And you'd have a city manager in a very hot city council meeting, and the mayor and the council, city manager, save us, save us, save us. And the city manager would take out a pipe, softly and slowly light it, take a few puffs, bought about 10 to 15 seconds of time to contemplate and to come up with a full analysis without anybody thinking he or she was stalling or he or she was postponing the inevitable answer. And same with a faculty member, given a hard question, light up the pipe.
Well, that's a great example, because that's oftentimes they tell you that, when you get asked a question or something like that, to pause.
Exactly.
And then if you can think of, 2 or 3 reasons or 2 or 3 issues that you can touch on, and you can kind of put it in a framework, of, discuss what the problem is, what are the 2 or 3 issues, and then follow up with your, conclusion and kind of work back. But, you have to think of that. You can't just, oftentimes just rattle things off. Particularly, people think that, people in politics or elected officials know everything. They think doctors know everything. We don't know everything.
Oh, absolutely.
And, but, if you can think through a process and know your limitations and are able to get that framework filled in and can get something rational out of that, for me, if I can see that somebody is a good person and they can think rationally, that's who I want as an elected official. I talked to somebody the other night about that, and it's like, unfortunately, the people that are good people that can think rationally don't want to go into politics.
Absolutely, when it becomes so personal. Yeah. Well, even the question, number of people to buy their time to deliberate a response will say, you asked a very good question, and that gives you about 2 seconds, 3 seconds to start to formulate. I don't know whether society today expects people to make quick decisions, a man or woman of action.
Well, it's a microwave mentality, but that goes back to something called the Dunning-Kruger effect. The less experience you have, and you just have a little bit of experience, people get very confident. And so the curve comes up, a lot of confidence, and then as soon as you get more experience, it drops down. And actually, I discussed that. The University of Oklahoma asked me advice I could give to their medical students. I said, don't lose the forest for the trees, which is kind of, I was kind of getting at Bloom's taxonomy on that. But I also talked about, from a patient standpoint, the Dunning-Kruger effect of you're going to get a little experience, but you're not going to know what you think you know.
No, absolutely.
And then at some point, you get down what they call the pit of despair, where you're like, man, I'm not going to know all this. No, just keep working. You're going to get there. But the key is knowing what you don't know, excuse me, and being self-aware and growing from that, and you will get through it, and your patients will be better for it. But don't be so arrogant to the point that you think you know everything, whether in politics or in medicine, because you don't. Or as a parent, even as a parent, you don't know everything.
When a person asks a physician, what are the odds, what are the chances, and so forth, and you're put right in the position on making life-saving, life-preservation decisions, and what's the best course. I think the question I used to always ask was, so if this was you, what would your choice be?
And I've had that. Last week I was on call, and there was a younger child that was going to have surgery, and they were like, well, if it was your daughter, what would you do? And or if it was your dad, what would you do in this situation? And you have those discussions. I've been in those discussions. I've been with my kids and my mom.
Oh, sure.
What would you do in this situation? And it's you have to you can have those heart-to-heart conversations with people, and I think they appreciate that. And particularly if you've been in that situation, you say, when I've been there with my mom, or I've been this is how we work through it, and they appreciate that.
We've had a delightful visit. In fact, we haven't even begun to carry the notes I had for this meeting, because Bryan is really, really insightful, not only from the psychological and the medical standpoint, from a good human being. Bryan Terry, it was great to have you here. I'm going to have you back